Oftentimes, people don't learn from their mistakes, but let's use this exercise for fun to point out what we have found over the years to be the most common sins that organizations and candidates make when coming together. I'll share these with you, and then what we'll do is we'll talk about more effective alternative strategies you can use, okay? And just like before with the lessons learned, I'll ask you to please keep track of how many of these you can relate to from your own experience. The first one, the employer oversells the job. Very clearly indicating this is the best place you've ever seen, you're going to love it here, yada, yada, yada. Tell you everything you could possibly imagine to want to take the job. What they don't do is they exaggerate the positive aspects and they hide many of the position's challenges. And in HR, one of the key things you want to do is provide the person with a realistic job preview. Using Disney approach, using the Disney approach, I like we adopt the approach of give people the chance to quit before they're hired. Okay? So the idea is you want to share with people the good, the bad, the ugly. I know that as part of our search practice, when we tell the candidates very clearly what the job is, not what they hope it is, but what the job is, and we scare people off. We've had a whole bunch of candidates who specifically took those positions after we made it a very deliberate negative sell with those candidates, and they told us that they really appreciated our candor. We encourage our clients to be really blunt with the candidates as well. And we've had a bunch of candidates that accepted positions specifically because they appreciated and respected the fact that they were told the truth. How many of you can relate to that? Okay. One of the other things you can do, recommended strategy, is to give your staff the opportunity to meet with these candidates. We can talk about how, but give them a sense of what the job is, not what they hope it is, but what the job really is. It shows the candidates that you value your staff's opinions. It gives your staff, it shows respect to your staff. It gives them a chance of exercising some control over their colleagues. And it's a win-win for all concerned. Next point is the candidate oversells him or herself. There's probably thousands of books and other articles out on the website right now, on the internet right now. The candidates telling you this is what you should do to get the job. Your goal is to get the job and make it seem like you're the best thing since sliced bread, and that you love to do everything that the job requires. Right? Well, what happens is that candidates have way more resources than ever before that they're using to impress you. So what we'll be able to do, in part through our conversation today, is to arm you with some things you can do to really get at. Is this really the right one for us? Okay? To break through this oversell, one of the things you can do very concretely is to ask the candidate very specific questions and ask their references very specific behaviorally based questions about what they do and what they did in specific circumstances that most closely approximate what that job requires them to do. Ask them for additional follow-up questions to probe the ins and the outs, but that's a great way of really teasing out, is this person the right one for us? Okay? And by the way, it may seem unusual or counterintuitive, give people a negative sell. But one of the things that we've learned, if you buy into the point I raised earlier about people loving their work, the best performers love what they do, part of what we do through testing, through interviews and all these other best practices, research that we do, is we match people's pathologies in a nice way and their passions with their positions. Okay? So what you want to do is, and inevitably you'll find a person who thinks, why would somebody want to work in this job? And inevitably, you find the person who likes it, like the organizational liking. They like it. So it'll pay dividends. We have an Aldridge recipient in the room right now. Would you care to share, now this is unsolicited, would you care to share your own experiences with this about just elaborate on this any way you like. I mean, because all this knowledge and sharing should come just from you. We have our good knowledge and you. Sir, yes, you.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, I think there's some truth to people chasing after their passions, and if they're passionate about what they do, they will rise up for challenges, and they won't see bad news as a bad thing. They'll see bad news as a challenge or an opportunity to make improvements. And a lot of people do, interestingly, rise up to do that.
So inevitably, if it's the right person, if you scare people off, you've done yourself and that person a favor. And if you happen to use pre-employment testing, which I would strongly advocate, and if you use it properly, it'll decrease the number of potential candidates you have, but you'll be far better off because if in fact you exclude those people on the front end, these are the exact same people that you wouldn't want to be there a month, 2 months, 3 months later, or they might not even be showing up anymore. Okay, so by looking at their work habits and focusing on these criteria, helps you to only focus your time, your limited time and resources on those people that are most likely to succeed, that you want to surround yourselves with. Okay? Third thing is a good paper match. Thank you, Rob. A good paper match overrules evidence-based considerations. How many times have we seen organizations that hire people based on their lovely, professionally prepared resumes, where they look like the people have done everything that the organization might possibly require? Okay? Looking good on paper by no means is sufficient evidence that they're going to be the right fit for the job. People tend to focus too much on people's knowledge, alleged knowledge and book smarts, and not enough on their established work habits. And rather than focusing on what people can do or what they know how to do, what I'd strongly urge you to focus on is what they will do. We take a 3-part approach. It's not included in the handouts. We call it the head, heart, feet is our approach. They're taking away all the psychology, mumbo jumbo. Just simplifying it for you. We look at people's heads, their hearts, and their feet. The heads are their technical knowledge. It's the book smarts. It's the stuff that they've learned. Pretty much in most of our positions, most of our candidates are going to have that basic ticket, as Rick indicated this morning. Okay? It's a basic entry ticket, but that's not sufficient. What we need to focus on much more so is not their heads, but their hearts and their feet. Heart and feet. Heart, there's their passions. What are the kinds of things that this person is driven to do, that this person loves to do? It's just part of their core personality. When you think about personalities, when you think about some of your top performers, people that you respect, it's got to be top 1% in their profession, in the country. If I were to ask you that leading question, I believe with confidence that what you'd say is that they love their work, they're driven to do it, and it's just part of who they are. They don't have to put on a mask and be somebody who they're not at work. Their work brings out the best of them. So what we're looking for is we want to consistently look for people who love to do whatever the job requires. That's their heart. And then by looking at their feet, we want to focus specifically on observable behaviors, histories of demonstrated behaviors. I believe that everybody in this room by now has heard the quote, but it's worth repeating, that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, especially in similar circumstances. So if you want to figure out whether or not a person is likely to succeed in your environment, what you want to do is you want to ask a targeted set of questions, specifically getting at and interview them for what they've done in similar circumstances. Okay. Resumes are deceptive. Too many times we see that people have these professionally prepared resumes that say that they're capable of doing everything from neurosurgery to typing 200 words a minute. Okay. But the It's just an exercise in creative writing, and it's oftentimes a professionally prepared resume. So don't place much stock in them. Quite candidly, in our firm, we take them, we look at the dates, but then we confirm everything on there, and then we just basically set them aside. We have much more effective ways of getting at what's most critical to your success and that person's success with you. Okay? We also find that generic job descriptions are way too frequently relied on and too heavily relied on. We find that a much more effective thing to do is to focus on more meaningful criteria rather than taking a generic job description, and let's be real, the most accurate item in most organizations' job descriptions is item number 39. It says completes all other duties as assigned, right? Right? So let's come up with some real critical criteria. What do we want this person to do? Spend the time on the front end. Define that, because going back to the life lesson learned, if we don't know what we're looking for, or where we're going, that kind of thing. So what we want to do is we want to define specifically what do we want this person to do in clear, objective, measurable terms. We've talked about how resumes are deceptive, talked about hiring decisions. Tons of evidence out there that suggests, that clearly indicate, not suggest, clearly indicate that hiring decisions are typically made at the gut level. They're typically made on the hiring authority's subjective impressions of the person without sufficient regard for other valuable evidence, easily and readily available evidence about this person. To significantly boost your hiring quotient and your return on investment, I urge you to consult objective and much more accurate sources of data, such as validated leadership assessments, behaviorally based interview questions with candidates and their references, and very targeted, very targeted reference questions in particular. We've had many references that when they were told by the candidate that they were going to be reached out to, and when we started hitting them directly with very carefully worded reference questions, they asked us, and this has happened hundreds of times, how did you know that about Harry? Okay? Because they're thinking, oh, what do you like most about Harry? They ask the standard questions. No, that's a great opportunity for you to learn critical insights about the person. Take advantage of it. Another critical thing is that, other than a dozen, is that hiring decisions are made on first and lasting impressions. It's a fact that candidates who don't make a good initial impression with their interviewers would be better off, would be making better use of their time once they pick that up for sure, to excuse themselves professionally and go out and go get a nice lunch. Because if in fact the interviewer has already made up their mind and it's clear in their behaviors that I see some smiles, I'm not even going to look directly at the people who are smiling, but who know about this. What happens is that these kinds of decisions happen all the time. They hurt the organization, they hurt our own effectiveness, and because we allowed our own subjective first impressions to paint, to cause us to make bad, ineffective, inaccurate hiring decisions. So what you can do, and what I would recommend that you do allocate for, is when you're interviewing a person and you're getting a sense that this may not be the right person for you, shift your questions around. Have some extra questions just to validate whether or not this person is really inappropriate. Oftentimes, we may think because of some of the other things we're going to get into about hanging hats, we'll get into that. As a matter of fact, I'll share that right now. Interviewers hang hats on candidates. By that I mean people oftentimes attribute, employers oftentimes attribute, and this absolutely applies to senior executives. They hang hats on candidates. They assume that the person has certain attributes because this person reminds them of somebody else. You shake your head in the back. They remind them of somebody else who happened to look like them, went to the same school that they did, whatever. But for whatever reason, you look like somebody I know, therefore you must be like them. whether that's good or bad, and then when it happens, I make a bad hiring decision. Okay, so we have to be careful not to go with those, with our, to hang hats on candidates. It is a fact, not just that employers tend to make decisions in the first 3 to 4 minutes, not just on first and lasting impressions, but that also it's a fact that hiring decisions typically are made in the first 4 minutes of an interview. Scary. Then what happens is the employer tends to spend the remaining 56 minutes trying to gather data to support the decision that they already made about you. How many of us in this room are familiar with the concept of cognitive dissonance? Okay, Samuel. Long and short of what cognitive dissonance is, it's a psychological term used to refer to the fact that we don't like to feel anxiety about decisions that we're about to make or that we've already made. So what we do, if we're choosing between an Acura versus a Toyota, whatever, what we do is we say, even though they may both be good cars, we tend to find reasons to rationalize to ourselves why we made the decisions we made. So taking this back to the hiring decision, what happens is people make decisions, and then you ask them, well, what was it you didn't like about candidate A? Well, yeah, I can't tell you, but I'll know the right one when I see them. If they had asked the right questions on the front end, they would likely have a very different opinion. Yes?
It's been my experience that, I'm part of a school district, so typically when they get to hiring superintendents, the board is involved. And I also see this at our church. So what I see that kind of relates to several of those last ones. So if the last person in that position, they like that person,
Yes.
they're looking for a replica of that.
Oh, okay.
So if the person smiles like the other guy, if they did not like the last leader, they look for characteristics that are opposite, which may really not align to what the organization needs at all. So if you just had someone who was very decisive and direct, in the first few minutes of an interview, you'll watch pointed questions that are really directed at that to get the opposite of what that other individual was. And it doesn't have anything to do with the needs of the organization.
When organizations and individuals in our personal lives have been burned, when we feel like we have been burned by others, or our organization's been burned, oftentimes what we see is examples where organizations try to then go out, and the individuals go out and systematically hire and date somebody who's a 180 from the original, when actually all they needed was maybe 15-degree separation. Okay? So it's either this or that. But the more clearly you define what you do want, what you don't want, and we find that it's a very good sounding board to help organizations. We have clients in the room that we've been through this before, by helping them to be super clear about what they want and why that's so important, it pays dividends on the back end when you're doing it, because it enables you to do a more meaningful comparison of that candidate, of the different candidates, against your needs. Which ties in beautifully with, we found that another problem that organizations have is that they hire people who they like, may have gone to the same church, but people who they like. And there are a lot of people out there that we refer to in our firm as nice neighbors. Wonderfully nice people, be wonderful to go golfing or to get together at a barbecue, but they can be totally inappropriate for the job, and oftentimes are. And when we ask the client, well, what was it you liked about this one? Why were you thinking about hiring this person? And they say, then you start drilling down and asking very innocent questions like, well, deliberate, may seem dumb, but that's okay. I like to joke with clients that I play Colombo comes naturally to me because it's easy for me to play that. But by going out and asking the same questions of the organization, the organizational leaders, and actually of each of the candidates, that's a great way of leveling the playing field. Okay? So, concerned about hiring people like ourselves, one of the things that you want to do, if in fact you want to hire people who are complements to you, but not necessarily clones. So the best thing that you can do for your organization, for your own success, for your own sanity, is to talk with other people who know you, who know your own idiosyncrasies. And if you're doing this for somebody else, encourage them who's making the decision. Encourage them to talk with other people who know them, who like them, who tolerate them. And find out, I'm going to give you two very simple but very, very powerful questions you can and should ask of anybody, okay? Or as you develop your specs. First, ask the immediate supervisor, the hiring authority, and people who've worked with him or her, what can this person, the new person, do to drive Sally or Bob crazy? And then ask, because we all have our own idiosyncrasies, somebody that works well with me now, may not work well with you. Then the second question you want to ask candidly and be very knowledgeable about is not just what can this person do to drive the immediate supervisor nuts. You've got to recognize that everybody has our own idiosyncrasies. So what you want to be aware of is, and ask about on the front is, what will the immediate supervisor do to drive this person crazy? Then what you want to do is you want to find people who have worked successfully with somebody like that person. Okay? We've talked about hiring people who they like, people like themselves, hanging hats, and then unfortunately we see lots of organizations who feel that time is short and they just hire the warm body. And I strongly urge you, for your organization's success and for your own success and sanity, avoid at all costs settling for less, because the price you pay for lowering your expectations could be your own job. We've done research studies. We've asked CEOs around the country, formal research studies, what's it actually cost you to hire the wrong person for a senior leadership position, just starting, let's say, at $100,000. They've given us all the details, but the long and short of it's been quoted in lots of other studies and papers. They indicated to us that 6 to 10 times the person's annual earnings. They said that the direct costs pale in comparison to the indirect costs. And they also wanted to tell us, as one CEO said, it could cost me my job. So, going back to the exercise, with a show of hands, how many of us could identify with, let's say, 8 of the 12? Okay. How about 9? 10? 11? 12? Okay, thank you very much. So everybody seemed to be able to relate pretty well to most of these. So the critical question moving forward is, so how can we determine in advance which employees are most likely to stay with our organizations? Well, I don't encourage you to do, you can call it different things, but you can just call it for conversation sake today. You want to develop a realistic job preview or a realistic success profile. We help our clients to objectively identify personality, specific personality traits, and other traits that are going to be required to succeed. We help them to define what are the key responsibilities, the key deliverables that are going to be required for success in the position. We help them to develop, we go way beyond the job description, but we help them to be very clear in hard, objective, measurable terms what are going to be the clear criteria for success. So you don't need to waste your time interviewing 15 people. And if in fact you find the right candidate with the first one you interview, you hire them. As long as the criteria are clear, as long as we can validate. You know, just because you interview 15 people doesn't mean you even have the right one. They say, well, this is the best of the crop. Well, you know what? Some organizations that settle when the person doesn't meet the criteria, they end up doing it again. But if the first candidate you interview is right, do it. So what you want to do is you want to take the criteria, looking at the head, heart, and feet, what is it they need to know? You want to take a very serious look at what's the style of the person that you need, and you want to very clearly delineate what this person must have done in other organizations so that they're most likely to succeed. Following from the teaching of the CEOs, if it's some stuff that can be taught that's unique to your organization, maybe it's not that critical if they've done it. Okay? What you want to then do is you want to match your prospective candidates with your unique needs along those dimensions that are going to matter most to your mutual success. Above and beyond certain technical knowledge, you can often tease out what are the personalities and the behavioral attributes among your best performers in a job category. Because these are the kinds of things that are going to drive them, the kinds of things that they love to do, whether it's task completion, making sure that people are engaged, that people are bought in, that people are satisfied, whatever. We can identify those personality attributes just by asking questions. All right? Your customer service people, for example, have to have, or should have, a good energy level. They have to be somewhat thick-skinned so that they don't shrivel up when somebody criticizes them or lashes out at them, especially in healthcare where your patients are in pain and the family members are just trying to, in most cases, just trying to advocate for the best interests of the patient. And these attributes can typically be measured with good assessment instruments. What we found time and time again, I'm trying to wrap up and allow time for Q&A. Let me just share with you some lessons learned that from other industry leaders that we've worked with regarding their recruitment, selection, retention, and even their development initiatives. Many organizations who previously thought they couldn't afford to spend any more money on these strategies have told us on many occasions that they've come to learn these two very valuable lessons. One, they couldn't afford not to try them out on a very limited basis initially, but prompted them to try out testing and the behavioral interviewing was that they learned the hard way that the nominal investment on the front end greatly was compensated for by the tremendous cost of their high turnover and the bad hires. So basically, they find it pays for itself pretty quickly. And just as they've learned that they could, with our cars, they've learned the hard way that it's sort of like just like we get our oil changed in our cars. It's like preventive maintenance. There's certain things we can do to make sure that we're running a high performer, establishing and maintaining a high performing organization by systematically setting high standards for anybody that we bring into the organization. So they view it as preventive maintenance, rather than allowing the toxins to get in and to permeate the organizations. They don't view the assessments as expensive, but they view them as a great return on their investment. That'll provide not just a great immediate, but a much longer, long-term